HOA took $900,000 from our reserve fund. Then 63 owners watched the FBI arrest the board. Before we begin today's story, we would like to ask you for one small favor. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss any of our latest videos. It only takes a moment, costs nothing, and is one of the best ways to help us continue creating powerful, emotional, and dramatic stories like this one. Your support means more to us than you can imagine. Also, let us know where you are watching from today. Share your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us return to our main character. Nobody leaves until the board puts its hands on the table. The voice came from the back of the Oak Valley clubhouse just as Lauren Whitmore raised her gavel to approve another $1 million collection from 63 frightened homeowners. The double doors swung open. Cold rain blew across the carpet. 6 federal agents stepped inside wearing navy jackets with yellow letters across their backs. FBI. For 1 second, the only sound in the room was the projector humming above us. Lauren stood behind the podium beneath a banner that read "Protecting Our Community." Her blonde hair was perfectly arranged. Her pearl earrings caught the fluorescent light. One manicured hand still held the gavel while the other rested beside a contract waiting for her signature. Charles Bennett, our HOA treasurer, pushed his chair backward. The metal legs scraped across the tile. An agent moved behind him. "Stay seated, Mr. Bennett." Charles sat down slowly. "My name is Nathan Brooks, and I was standing in the 3rd row with a black binder pressed against my ribs. Inside were forged invoices, hidden transfers, threatening letters, and one violation notice Lauren had signed so hard the ink bled through the paper. 6 months of lies sat inside that binder. $900,000 had vanished from our reserve fund. Now Lauren wanted every owner to pay another $18,000. The clubhouse smelled of burnt coffee, wet coats, and the sharp floral perfume Lauren wore to every board meeting. Beside me, Margaret Ellis gripped the back of a folding chair. She had managed bank accounts for 34 years before retiring, but even she looked shaken as Special Agent Rachel Monroe walked toward the podium carrying a federal warrant. Lauren lifted her chin. "This is a private homeowners association meeting," she said. "You cannot interrupt official business." Agent Monroe unfolded the document. The paper snapped open in the silence. "We are executing federal arrest and search warrants." A whisper moved through the room. Lauren's expression changed. Not much, just enough. The smile disappeared first. Then the color drained from the skin around her mouth. For the first time since I had known her, the woman who ruled Oak Valley through fines, liens, and carefully worded threats looked uncertain. Agent Monroe read the names. Lauren Whitmore, Charles Bennett, Melissa Grant, Robert Gaines, Edward Price, every member of the board. A woman behind me gasped. Someone near the rear whispered, "They actually stole it." Across the aisle, Mrs. Holloway pressed both hands over her mouth. Lauren looked directly at me. Her stare carried the same contempt she had shown when I requested the financial records. The same cold confidence she wore when she warned that unpaid penalties could cost me my house. But now there was something else beneath it. Recognition. She finally understood that the quiet construction auditor she had dismissed had followed every vendor, every false signature, and every dollar routed through companies controlled by board members and their relatives. She understood I had never stopped investigating. I had only stopped warning her. Agent Monroe stepped behind the podium. "Lauren Whitmore, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, theft involving federal program funds, money laundering, and obstruction." The gavel slipped from Lauren's hand. It struck the carpet with a dull wooden thud. That sound took me back to the night this began. Rain had hammered Oak Valley for 9 straight hours. Water poured through the roof of an 82-year-old widow's home. Brown stains spread across her ceiling while she stood barefoot beneath them holding a blue plastic bucket. The board had ignored her repair requests for months. Oak Valley once had $900,000 set aside for roofs, drainage, and structural emergencies, enough to protect every family in the community. Then the money disappeared. Lauren called it emergency spending. Charles called it routine accounting. The board called anyone who questioned them dangerous. But numbers do not care what powerful people call them. Numbers leave trails. And with the metallic click of handcuffs closing around Lauren's wrists, that trail finally reached the woman who believed she had erased it. What she still did not know was that the FBI had found something even bigger than our missing reserve fund. 6 months earlier, Oak Valley still looked like the kind of neighborhood people trusted. Every lawn was cut to the same height. White mailboxes stood in perfect rows. Sprinklers clicked before sunrise, throwing silver arcs across sidewalks that smelled of wet concrete and fresh-cut grass. Then the November storm arrived. Rain hammered the roofs for 9 straight hours. Wind shoved branches against windows. Water rushed through the parking lots in dark sheets, carrying leaves, mulch, and plastic cups toward storm drains already packed with years of mud. At 1:18 in the morning, Mrs. Holloway called me. "Nathan, my ceiling is coming down." Her voice was thin and trembling. I pulled on jeans, grabbed my flashlight, and drove across the community. Water slapped beneath my truck. Lightning flashed over Building D, revealing loose shingles scattered across the pavement like pieces of burned paper. Mrs. Holloway opened her door barefoot. The smell hit me first. Wet drywall, mold, carpet soaked through to the padding. A brown stain spread across her living room ceiling. Water dripped into a blue plastic bucket she had placed beneath it. Each drop struck the bottom with a hollow tap. Then the plaster cracked. A section of ceiling collapsed onto her couch in a cloud of dust and insulation. Mrs. Holloway flinched against the wall. She was 82, recently widowed, and living on a fixed income. She had reported the roof damage 4 times that summer. Lauren's board had promised repairs after the next reserve review. Nothing happened. I called Lauren at 1:34. She answered after 7 rings. This had better be an emergency. Mrs. Holloway's ceiling just collapsed. Pause followed. I heard soft music behind her and the faint clink of ice inside a glass. "The storm is affecting everyone," she said. "The roof is common property. Interior damage is the owner's responsibility. The water came through the roof." Her voice sharpened. "Do not interpret association policy for me, Mr. Brooks." I looked at Mrs. Holloway holding a towel beneath the broken ceiling. "How much is left in the reserve fund?" The line went quiet. "That information is confidential." It was not. I had spent 16 years auditing construction budgets, insurance claims, subcontractor invoices, and reserve schedules. Owners had the right to inspect Oak Valley's financial records. More importantly, the previous annual statement had shown $900,000 in reserve. Enough to replace the roofs. Enough to repair the drainage system. Enough to prevent this. By sunrise, 5 more homes were leaking. The east lot had flooded ankle deep. Brown water bubbled from a storm drain beside the playground, filling the cold air with the sour smell of sewage. Lauren arrived at 8 in a white Mercedes. She stepped onto the sidewalk wearing beige pumps and a cream trench coat. She never entered Mrs. Holloway's home. She stood beneath a clear umbrella, glanced at the damaged roof, and called it minor storm intrusion. Then she handed me a violation notice. $500 for interfering with an emergency inspection and creating unnecessary alarm among residents. The paper was still warm from her printer. I read it once. Lauren smiled. "Perhaps this will remind you to follow proper channels." I folded the notice carefully and placed it inside my jacket. At that moment, I did not know where the missing money had gone. But Lauren had just handed me the first page of the case that would destroy her. The violation notice should have frightened me. Instead, it gave me a date, Lauren's signature, and proof that the board had answered a structural emergency by punishing the person who documented it. I scanned the page before the rain dried on my jacket. Then I created a folder on my computer. Oak Valley Reserve Fund. The next morning, I sent a formal records request by certified mail and email. I asked for reserve studies, bank statements, vendor contracts, invoices, insurance payments, meeting minutes, and every transaction above $5,000 from the previous 3 years. Nothing secret, nothing unusual, just records belonging to the 63 owners who had paid for them. Lauren answered 13 minutes later. Your request is excessively broad, disruptive, and intended to harass volunteer board members. I read the message while steam curled from my coffee. People with clean books usually send documents. People with dirty books send accusations. 3 days later, Lauren called an emergency HOA meeting. The clubhouse smelled of lemon cleaner, damp carpet, and coffee burned down to black sludge. Fluorescent lights buzzed above the board table. Lauren sat in the center wearing a navy blazer and the patient smile of someone preparing to explain why everyone else was wrong. Charles Bennett sat beside her, tapping a gold pen against a leather folder. Melissa Grant, Robert Gaines, and Edward Price formed a silent wall around them. Lauren struck the gavel. Recent misinformation has created unnecessary fear among residents. Her eyes settled on me. She claimed the reserve fund had been depleted by storm preparation, insurance increases, roof stabilization, drainage maintenance, and emergency consulting expenses. Each sentence sounded polished, official, empty. I raised my hand. Which roofs were stabilized? Charles's pen stopped tapping. Lauren glanced at her notes. Multiple buildings. Name one. A low murmur moved through the room. Her smile tightened. This is not an interrogation, Mr. Brooks. No, I said. It is an owner's meeting. I placed a copy of the bylaws on the table. Yellow tabs marked the section granting owners access to financial records. Lauren did not look down. Instead, she announced that all documents would require legal review, a $5,000 processing deposit, and copying fees of $4 per page. Several owners gasped. From the second row, Margaret Ellis stood. She was 69, silver-haired, and calm in the way only someone who had spent 34 years handling other people's money could be calm. That fee is designed to prevent inspection, she said. Lauren struck the gavel again. Sit down, Margaret. Margaret remained standing. For one long second, Lauren looked at both of us. Something moved behind her eyes. Not irritation, fear. After the meeting, Margaret followed me into the rain-dark parking lot. Water hissed beneath passing tires. Without speaking, she handed me a folded sheet protected inside a plastic grocery bag. It was part of a bank statement. 3 transfers. Same week. $60,000 each. Same destination. Whitmore Community Consulting. The company address printed beneath the transactions belonged to Lauren's house. I looked toward the clubhouse windows. Lauren was watching us from behind the glass. The missing money had just left its first footprint. The 3 transfers totaled $180,000. Each was labeled Emergency Infrastructure Consulting. There had been no infrastructure work. I knew because I walked every inch of Oak Valley the next morning. The storm drains were rusted. The retaining wall behind Building E had split from top to bottom. Orange survey paint from a canceled repair project still faded across the pavement. There were no fresh tire tracks, no new concrete, no replaced pipe. Only neglect. Margaret met me near the clubhouse at 7, carrying a brown leather folder beneath her coat. The air smelled of wet leaves and diesel from a landscaping truck idling beside the entrance. I checked the state business registry, she said. She opened the folder. Whitmore Community Consulting had been formed 14 months earlier. Lauren was listed as the managing member. The registered address matched her home. The company had no website, no employees, and no professional license. That alone does not prove theft, Margaret said. No, I answered, but it proves she paid her own company without telling the owners. We needed more. That afternoon, I requested Oak Valley's annual financial summaries from the property management company. They sent 3 versions. The first showed $412,000 in roof stabilization. The second showed $286,000. The third removed roofing entirely and replaced it with general community protection. Same year. Same reserve account. 3 different stories. I printed every version and arranged them across my dining table. The printer hummed. Rain tapped against the windows. Yellow highlighter marks spread across the pages like warning lights. At 9:41 that night, I found the first fake contractor. Bennett Exterior Solutions had received $96,000 for emergency repairs to buildings B and D. The address on the invoice led to a mailbox store beside a laundromat. The phone number went straight to a full voicemail box. The company owner was listed as Kevin Bennett, Charles's younger brother. The next morning, I drove there. Warm air from the laundromat vents carried the smell of detergent across the parking lot. Inside the mailbox store, a board clerk confirmed Bennett Exterior Solutions had rented a box for 6 months, then stopped paying. No deliveries, he said. Mostly bank letters. I photographed the directory and stepped outside. Lauren was waiting beside my truck. Cream coat, dark glasses, white Mercedes parked across 2 spaces. "You are following board members' families now?" she asked. "I am visiting a public business. You are conducting an unauthorized investigation." Her voice was loud enough for the clerk to hear through the glass. Then she handed me another violation notice. $2,000 for harassment, interference with association operations, and damage to the board's reputation. I studied the page. Her signature pressed so hard into the paper that the ink had bled through. "You need to stop," she said quietly. The parking lot noise seemed to disappear. "Stop what?" "Digging into matters you do not understand." She stepped closer. Her perfume mixed with hot exhaust. "People can lose their homes over unpaid liens, Nathan." There it was. Not advice. A threat. I folded the notice and placed it beside the first one inside my jacket. Lauren watched me do it. She still believed those papers were weapons. She did not understand that every signature was becoming evidence. 3 days after Lauren threatened my home, Oak Valley began treating me like a contamination warning. Neighbors who used to wave from their porches suddenly studied their phones when I passed. The community Facebook page filled with anonymous posts calling me unstable, vindictive, and dangerous. Someone uploaded a photograph of me outside the mailbox store beneath the caption "Nathan Brooks stalks HOA families." The picture had been taken from Lauren's Mercedes. Then the certified letters arrived. One violation claimed I stored commercial materials inside my garage. Another cited unauthorized exterior lighting. A third accused my truck of leaking oil onto common pavement, even though the concrete beneath it was dry enough to show every grain of dust. By Friday, my fines had reached $5,000. The final notice came on thick cream paper. "Pay within 10 days or lien proceedings will begin." I stood at my kitchen counter, feeling the raised lettering beneath my thumb. Outside, sprinklers hissed across perfect lawns while a blue tarp still covered Mrs. Holloway's broken roof. That contrast told me everything. They had money for attorneys. They had money for threats. They simply had no money for homeowners. Margaret arrived after sunset carrying 2 grocery bags. One held coffee and turkey sandwiches. The other held 41 pages of public filings, archived board packets, and financial records residents had saved before Lauren removed them from the online portal. We spread everything across my dining table. The room smelled of black coffee, printer toner, and the cedar candle my daughter had given me for Christmas. Margaret adjusted her glasses while I entered each payment into a spreadsheet. Vendor, date, amount, approving signatures. At 11:22 p.m., a pattern appeared. Payments to Bennett Exterior Solutions always arrived 2 days before transfers from Bennett into another company called Gaines Property Logistics. Robert Gaines, one of the board members. We checked the state registry. Gaines Property Logistics operated from a storage unit behind an abandoned shopping center. No employees, no equipment, no active contractor license. Yet Oak Valley had paid it $240,000 for drainage reconstruction. I opened photographs taken after the storm. The same rusted grates, the same cracked drains, the same mud packed beneath them for years. No reconstruction had ever happened. At midnight, Margaret found something worse. A scanned invoice carried my signature. Nathan Brooks, project auditor. I had never seen it. The document claimed I had inspected and approved $112,000 in emergency foundation repairs. My name had been typed beneath a crude imitation of my signature. Lauren had not only stolen the reserve money, she had prepared someone else to blame. My phone vibrated against the table. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "Stop now, or you will lose more than your house." Margaret read it over my shoulder. The refrigerator hummed behind us. Rain ticked inside the gutter. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I photographed the message, backed it up, and preserved the original phone for investigators. "They are panicking," Margaret whispered. I looked at the forged signature again. "No," I said. "They think I am." That night, we stopped investigating missing money. We started building a criminal case. Building a criminal case changed the way I looked at Oak Valley. Every invoice became a footprint. Every email became a fingerprint. Every threat became proof that someone knew exactly what Margaret and I were finding. For the next 2 weeks, my dining room became an evidence lab after dark. During the day, I reviewed construction budgets and insurance claims for clients who had no idea my own HOA was trying to take my house. At night, Margaret and I worked beneath the yellow light above my table. Red folders held bank transfers. Blue folders held vendor records. A black binder held violation notices, the forged invoice, and photographs of repairs that had never happened. The room smelled of stale coffee, warm printer toner, and the cedar candle burning beside my laptop. My calculator clicked until my fingertips felt numb. By the end of the second week, we had traced $708,000. $180,000 had gone to Whitmore Community Consulting. $96,000 had passed through Bennett Exterior Solutions. Another $240,000 moved through Gaines Property Logistics before landing in accounts connected to Robert Gaines and Charles Bennett. The remaining transactions led to a company called Price Municipal Partners. Unlike the others, Price Municipal looked legitimate. It had a polished website, a downtown office, and a list of public infrastructure projects across 3 counties. Then I checked the incorporation records. The registered agent was Edward Price's brother, Thomas. Thomas Price was not on the HOA board. He worked as a deputy county administrator responsible for reviewing stormwater grants and municipal reimbursements. That connection changed everything. 18 months earlier, Oak Valley had received a $200,000 federal stormwater mitigation grant. The payment entered our reserve account on a Monday. By Friday, $192,000 had been transferred to Price Municipal Partners. No drainage work followed. The rusted grates outside Building E were still packed with years of mud and debris. Margaret leaned back in her chair. "This is bigger than an HOA dispute." I looked at the grant documents spread across the table. "It is federal money." The next morning, I contacted the FBI through its public corruption reporting line. I expected an automated response. Instead, Special Agent Rachel Monroe called me that afternoon. Her voice was calm and precise. "Do not confront the board again," she said. "Do not post your evidence online. Preserve every original document. They forged my signature. That may help establish intent." For the first time, Lauren's retaliation felt useful. Agent Monroe arranged a meeting at a federal building 40 miles away. Margaret and I drove separately. The lobby smelled of floor wax and cold metal. Security officers opened the black binder page by page before allowing us upstairs. Inside a windowless conference room, 3 agents listened without interrupting. I showed them the forged invoice. Margaret explained the transaction pattern. Agent Monroe studied the Price municipal transfers, then looked up. "Can the board collect more money without showing owners the full records?" "They need an owner vote for a special assessment," I said. Her expression changed. "They may try to refill the account before they run." 7 weeks passed. The FBI quietly subpoenaed bank records, interviewed vendors, and traced accounts Margaret and I could not access. Lauren believed I had surrendered. Then a cream-colored envelope appeared in every mailbox. Emergency special assessment. $18,000 per household. A special vote would be held Thursday night. All 63 owners were urged to attend. Lauren believed she was about to refill the reserve fund. Agent Monroe believed she was about to complete the fraud. And I knew exactly where the trap would close. The emergency assessment notice hit Oak Valley like a foreclosure warning. $18,000 per household. due within 30 days if the vote passed. Lauren called it the only responsible way to protect our property values. She never mentioned that her board had already drained $900,000 from the reserve fund. By noon, neighbors were gathering beneath garage awnings, holding the cream-colored envelopes while rain spilled from the gutters. Voices carried across the parking lot. One couple argued about emptying their retirement account. Another discussed selling a truck they had finally paid off. Mrs. Holloway stood beside her mailbox with both hands shaking. Fear was moving through Oak Valley exactly the way Lauren intended. Fast, loud, too quickly for anyone to study the numbers. At 2:06 that afternoon, I sent her an email. I am withdrawing my objections and will not challenge the special assessment. The sentence felt like oil on my screen. Margaret stood behind me as I clicked send. She will think you surrendered, she said. She needs to. Lauren replied 8 minutes later. Thank you for choosing cooperation over continued disruption. The next morning, every fine against me disappeared from the owner portal. $5,000 erased with one click. That proved the penalties had never been about rules. They had been leverage. Agent Monroe instructed me to stay quiet. No public accusations. No neighborhood meetings. No warning Lauren that federal investigators were already tracing the accounts. So I stopped speaking. Lauren mistook silence for defeat. Then she became careless. The board emailed its assessment presentation to all 63 owners. The budget claimed the new money would fund roof replacement, drainage reconstruction, and insurance stabilization. 3 companies appeared on the payment schedule: Bennett Exterior Solutions, Gaines Property Logistics, Price Municipal Partners, the same companies connected to the missing reserve money. Lauren was not trying to repair Oak Valley. She was preparing to steal from it twice. The vote required a quorum, so the board pressured every household to attend Thursday night. Lauren called owners personally. Charles delivered ballots door to door. Robert Gaines warned residents that rejecting the assessment could make their homes impossible to insure. By Thursday, the clubhouse parking lot was full. Rain polished the asphalt black. Headlights moved across the windows as families hurried inside carrying umbrellas and financial statements. The room smelled of wet coats, burnt coffee, and fresh printer ink. I arrived early with the black binder beneath my jacket. Margaret sat beside me in the 3rd row. You look calm, she whispered. I am counting exits. There were 3. The front doors, the kitchen hallway, the service entrance behind the board table. At exactly 7, Lauren struck the gavel. She spoke for 22 minutes about sacrifice, responsibility, and community survival. Charles displayed charts predicting financial collapse. Melissa Grant distributed ballots. Edward Price placed 3 vendor contracts beside Lauren's microphone. Then the assessment appeared on the projector. $18,000 per home. More than $1 million total. Lauren signed the contracts. Charles authorized the payment schedule. The board voted unanimously. That was the moment Agent Monroe had been waiting for. I stood. Every face turned toward me. Lauren smiled, certain I was about to support her. Instead, I connected an encrypted drive to the projector. The screen went black. Then 3 transfers appeared. $60,000 each. Whitmore Community Consulting. Lauren's smile vanished. Outside, tires hissed across the rain-soaked pavement. 3 dark federal vehicles stopped beside the clubhouse. The trap had closed. The 3 transfers glowed across the projector screen. $60,000 each. Whitmore Community Consulting. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then 63 homeowners began speaking at once. Lauren struck the gavel so hard the microphone shrieked. This presentation is unauthorized. I clicked again. $96,000 to Bennett Exterior Solutions. Then $240,000 to Gaines Property Logistics. Then $192,000 in federal stormwater money transferred to Price Municipal Partners 4 days after reaching our reserve account. Charles Bennett stood so quickly his chair crashed backward. Turn that off. Nobody listened. I opened the forged invoice carrying my name. Nathan Brooks, project auditor. My copied signature sat beneath $112,000 in foundation repairs that had never happened. That signature is not mine, I said. Lauren pointed toward the doors. Remove him. The doors opened before anyone moved. Cold rain swept across the carpet as 6 federal agents entered wearing navy jackets marked with yellow letters. FBI. The room fell silent. Special Agent Rachel Monroe walked directly toward the board table. Nobody leave. Robert Gaines turned toward the kitchen hallway. 2 agents blocked him before he reached it. Melissa Grant grabbed her phone. Place it on the table, an agent said. Her hand shook as she obeyed. Edward Price stared at the contracts beside Lauren's microphone. Charles looked down at the payment schedule he had signed less than a minute earlier. Lauren remained behind the podium. This is a private association meeting, she said. You have no jurisdiction here. Agent Monroe unfolded a federal warrant. The paper snapped open. We are executing federal arrest and search warrants. She read the names slowly. Lauren Whitmore, Charles Bennett, Melissa Grant, Robert Gaines, Edward Price. Each name landed harder than the gavel. Then came the charges. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Theft involving federal program funds. Money laundering. Obstruction. Use of forged documents to further the fraud. Mrs. Holloway covered her mouth. Margaret stood beside me, perfectly still, tears shining behind her glasses. Lauren looked at me. You did this. Her voice had lost its polished sweetness. I closed the black binder. No, I said. You signed it. Agent Monroe stepped behind her. The first handcuff closed with a metallic click. Charles began explaining that he only approved payments. Robert claimed the companies were legitimate. Melissa said she trusted Lauren. Edward insisted his signatures were administrative. The agents listened without reacting. One by one, the board members were moved away from the table they had controlled for years. Another team entered carrying sealed evidence bags from Lauren's Mercedes and the HOA office. Inside were blank invoices, company stamps, prepaid phones, and computer drives seized under warrant. Agent Monroe did not open them in the room. She did not need to. The bank records had already spoken. As Lauren was led toward the doors, one beige pump slipped on the rain-dark tile. She caught herself against the wall and looked back at the projector. The 3 $60,000 transfers were still visible. The first footprint Margaret had handed me beneath a plastic grocery bag months earlier. Now the entire trail surrounded her. 63 owners watched the board disappear into the rain. Nobody applauded. Nobody shouted. There was only the sound of wet shoes, quiet sobbing, and Lauren's gavel rolling off the podium before stopping beneath my chair. Justice did not arrive with applause. It arrived 14 months later in a federal courtroom that smelled of old wood, paper dust, and cold air conditioning. Lauren Whitmore sat at the defense table without her pearls, perfume, or polished gavel. Charles Bennett stared at his folded hands. Robert Gaines kept swallowing. Melissa Grant and Edward Price avoided the gallery, where 63 Oak Valley owners filled every bench. Thomas Price sat at an adjoining table in a county-issued jail uniform. The investigation had uncovered more than our missing $900,000. Federal agents discovered that Price Municipal Partners had diverted stormwater grants from 3 other communities. Lauren's board had not made one reckless decision. They had built a system. They created fake emergencies, hired companies controlled by relatives, approved invoices for work that never happened, and threatened anyone who asked to inspect the books. My forged signature had been their insurance policy. Instead, it became one of the strongest exhibits against them. The prosecutor displayed it beside my certified records requests, Lauren's violation notices, and the message threatening my home. Every attempt to silence me formed a clean timeline of intent. Lauren called those documents community enforcement. The jury called them evidence. Over the following year, the guilty pleas and sentencing hearings unfolded one by one. Charles and Robert cooperated after federal accountants traced money into their personal accounts. Melissa admitted signing contracts she knew had never been completed. Edward confessed that his brother's company had been created to receive the grant money. Thomas received the longest sentence after investigators connected him to similar schemes across the county. Lauren went to trial. She was convicted of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, theft involving federal program funds, money laundering, and obstruction. The judge sentenced her to 11 years in federal prison. When he asked whether she wished to speak, Lauren stood slowly. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. "I was trying to protect Oak Valley." Mrs. Holloway made a sound behind me, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. The judge looked over his glasses. "You protected yourself." That sentence was quieter than the FBI raid. Cut deeper. Over the next 2 years, federal asset forfeiture, insurance proceeds, and settlements returned $788,000 to Oak Valley. The remaining loss was covered through settlements with the former management company and outside accounting firm. We did not spend it on fountains. We fixed the roofs first. I stood inside Mrs. Holloway's living room when the final ceiling panel was installed. Fresh white paint covered the old brown stain. The room smelled of plaster and coffee instead of mold. She touched the repaired wall with her fingertips. "My husband would have liked this," she said. The drainage system came next, then the retaining wall. The pool reopened in July, and children rushed through the gate before the lifeguard finished blowing his whistle. Margaret became treasurer of the new board. I refused the presidency. I had spent enough time around titles to understand that authority means nothing without accountability. We created an online financial dashboard, required independent audits, and gave owners approval rights over major contracts. Every invoice could be inspected. Every meeting was recorded. The old gavel disappeared. Nobody admitted taking it. Sometimes, when rain taps against my bedroom window, I remember the first violation notice, still warm from Lauren's printer. She thought that paper would frighten me into silence. Instead, it became the first page of her case file. Corrupt people always make the same mistake. They confuse patience with weakness. They believe silence means surrender. But justice is rarely loud when it begins. Sometimes it is only one homeowner saving a document, one retired banker following a transfer, and 63 neighbors finally deciding to look together. Justice does not need a gavel. It needs proof. And once the truth has a paper trail, even the most powerful liar eventually hears the handcuffs close.